And when you're running or exercising or doing whatever it is you're doing, you're facing that adversity, you want to stop. I heard you mention on another show, another podcast, that if you had to go sprinkle fairy dust and go back in history and say, okay, here's what I would have done different, it was more the positive self-talk. This was, I think, a few years back. Is that still in line with your thinking?
Absolutely. And going back to something I was saying earlier, it's like this is something that's hard for me. It has been hard for me to kind of swallow. It's because this is, the sports psychologist that worked with my college track team in the 90s. She was trying to teach us positive self-talk and its opposite, which is stopping negative thoughts. She taught us this 5-part thing. If you're having a negative thought, you have to recognize it. You have to then refuse to continue to thinking it, to let it dominate your thoughts. Recognize, refuse, then you relax, reframe your thoughts in a more positive way, and resume your activity. You recognize, refuse, relax, reframe, resume. We memorized it, but we didn't actually implement it. We didn't think it was that big a deal. So I am sort of like skeptical of like, oh yeah, if you believe you can achieve. But I'm also willing to look at the evidence, and over the last few years, there've been, or let's say over the last 5 years or so, there've been some really interesting studies saying, okay, let's test this. It makes sense. It sounds like it should work, but let's take a bunch of people, give them a physical test, give half of them positive self-talk training, and test them again. And it's like, yeah, the self-talk actually improves your physical limits. And I think it's worth sort of maybe pausing to ask, why should we think this works? And the answer is, going back to what we were talking about at the top, like if you're trying to understand what is your actual limit, what stops you? If I go out and run, you put me on a treadmill, set the speed at a given speed, and say, okay, Alex, run till you fall off. What is the point at which I fall off? What can we measure that will tell me I have hit my physical limit? Well, if you do it, that's actually a much harder question than you think. Because when I fall off the back of the treadmill, my heart rate won't be at my max. My VO2 max, my oxygen consumption won't be at max. My lactate levels won't be maxed out. There's no physiological parameter that will be as high as it can go at the moment when I fall off the treadmill. There's only going to be one thing that's as high as it can go, and that is my subjective perception of effort. So, and it's not even my pain. If you ask me to rate my pain when I fall off the back of the treadmill, it might be 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10. So it's hurting, but it's not maxed out. But if you ask me, how hard is it to continue? The effort is the struggle to continue against a mounting desire to stop. And if you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10, then the moment before I fall off the back of the treadmill, that is the one single solitary parameter that will be maxed out. And this is a subjective perception of effort. Now, it depends on all the physical stuff. It depends on the pain I feel. It depends on lactate levels, heart rate, temperature, all these things. But it also depends on how I'm feeling about things, how optimistic I am, how much sleep I got last night. So that's where positive self-talk it can't change your heart rate. It can't change your lactate levels, but it can change your subjective perception of how close you are to that 10 out of 10 effort. So once I understood that argument, which is an argument that grows out of the Tim Noakes central governor model that I talked about earlier, it's a sort of continuation of that idea that effort is really what matters. Then it's like, oh, wait, yeah, if I'm sitting there saying, this sucks, I cannot do this. This is so stupid. Why did I try this in the first place? I'm going to rate my effort a little higher. I'm going to be like, yeah, this sucks. I already feel like I'm at 9 out of 10. Whereas if I'm saying, this is hard, but this is how it's supposed to feel, and everyone else probably feels just as bad or worse than I do. This is what I've trained for. I can do this. Then the exact same physiological state, I'm going to say, it's okay. This is what it's supposed to feel like. This is 7 out of 10. It's 7.5 out of 10. And I'm going to keep going for longer. I'm going to go faster. So that's the kind of the argument that convinced me that it's plausible. And then the experimental evidence says, hey, it actually really works. People do go longer when they learn to reject the sort of this sucks, I should quit, and replace it with, keep pushing. This is what I signed up for.